I recently lost my husband, David, and the wounds still feel fresh. What happened at his funeral brought back memories I'd been trying to process these past few years, especially regarding Emma, our former adoptive daughter. While I need to talk about the events that unfolded that day, let me first give you some context about our family. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 48, and David and I had been together since high school. We married when I was 21, and by 25, we decided to start a family. Unfortunately, we both struggled with fertility issues. After almost 2 years of trying, we chose adoption over IVF, not just because it was an option, but because we genuinely wanted to make a difference in a child's life. We specifically chose to adopt through the foster care system, knowing there were children who needed stable, loving homes. That's how Emma Collins came into our lives. She was 4 when we started fostering her. Her biological parents, James and Linda Collins, were struggling with addiction at the time, and no other family members were willing to take her in. We officially adopted her a year later, after her birth parents relinquished their rights, believing she would have a better life with us. It was a closed adoption, meaning there would be no contact between Emma and her biological parents until she turned 18. They honored that agreement, at least until her 18th birthday. That's when everything changed. James and Linda reached out to her, asking her to come stay with them. They had turned their lives around completely, and they wanted her to give them a chance. Despite David and I being her parents for most of her life, Emma chose to leave us for them. The hardest part wasn't just that she left, it was that she did it all behind our backs. By the time we discovered what was happening, her mind was already made up. The painful truth became clear. Her birth parents had become wealthy tech entrepreneurs, and we were still just middle-class healthcare workers. Looking back, I can see now that money was always important to Emma, even from a young age. Middle school years. From her middle school days onward, Emma's materialistic tendencies became increasingly apparent. While David and I managed the nursing care facility we'd built from the ground up, providing a comfortable life, Emma's demands grew more extravagant. She wanted designer clothes, international vacations, and an allowance that could rival her wealthy classmates. We tried to instill values about hard work and financial responsibility, but it was challenging. Though our facility was successful enough to provide a comfortable lifestyle, we weren't the type of family who could drop everything for impromptu vacations or spend thousands on weekend shopping sprees. We believed in working hard, saving money, and making thoughtful decisions about spending, values that seemed to frustrate Emma more as she grew older. "Mom, Ashley's parents are taking her whole class to Hawaii for her sweet 16, she'd complain, her voice filled with envy. "Why can't we do something like that?" I'd try to explain, "Honey, we're comfortable, but that kind of expense isn't reasonable for us. We need to think about the facility, our employees, and your college fund." By 16, the situation had become increasingly difficult. Emma's social media was filled with posts about luxury brands she couldn't afford and vacation destinations she yearned to visit. She'd spend hours scrolling through Instagram, comparing our life to those of her wealthier friends. The turning point. Everything changed around her 18th birthday. Her birth parents, now successful tech entrepreneurs, sent her an email that would alter all our lives. They explained their journey, how losing her had been their wake-up call, how they'd gotten clean, rebuilt their lives, and eventually started a successful IT venture. They now had 2 younger children and wanted to reconnect with Emma, their firstborn. The betrayal. Instead of sharing this life-changing email with us, Emma began meeting them secretly. That's how she discovered the extent of their wealth. Their mansion in Seattle's exclusive neighborhoods, their luxury cars, their lavish lifestyle. For 4 months, while telling us she was out with friends, she was building a relationship with her birth family. I'll never forget the day she finally told us. She sat us down in our living room, the same room where we'd shared so many family moments, and showed us the email from her birth parents. The shock on our faces meant nothing to her. She calmly explained that she'd been spending time with them and had decided they were a better fit for her life. "There's a reason I was born to them first," she said, her voice steady, while my hands trembled. "I want to give this a real shot. I need you both to not contact me anymore. I want to start fresh with my actual parents." The words "actual parents" felt like a physical blow. Within days, she had packed her belongings and left our home, the home where she'd grown up, where we'd nursed her through illnesses, celebrated her achievements, and loved her unconditionally for 14 years. The aftermath. We didn't pursue legal action, though we could have challenged how her birth parents had found her. What would have been the point? She was legally an adult, and her choice was made. It wasn't until we saw her social media posts that we understood the full picture. There she was, living the high life she'd always wanted. Exotic vacations, designer clothes, endless parties. All those years of trying to teach her about responsibility and the value of money had been washed away by the allure of wealth. The realization hit hard. We had spent 14 years raising a daughter who valued material wealth over family bonds. David and I had to accept that our love, our sacrifices, our dedication meant less to her than the lifestyle her biological parents could provide. 8 years later, 8 years passed. It was painful, but gradually, David and I found a way to move forward. Our care facility flourished, expanding into a successful chain of nursing homes across the Seattle area. We weren't just comfortable anymore. We were genuinely prosperous. But success felt hollow without family to share it with. Then came the devastating news. David was diagnosed with liver cancer. For 3 years, we fought together, trying every treatment possible. I watched my high school sweetheart, my partner in life and business, grow weaker despite our best efforts. The care facility network we'd built together became my anchor as I balanced managing our business with caring for him. "Sarah," he'd say during his clearer moments, "you're stronger than you know. Promise me you'll keep going, keep helping people through our facilities." A week ago, we lost him. The pain is still raw, like an open wound that won't heal. During those final days, I knew Emma had heard about David's illness through mutual connections. Several of her old high school friends' parents reached out with condolences, so she must have known. Yet she never contacted us, never tried to say goodbye to the man who had been her father for 14 years. The funeral. Today's funeral should have been about honoring David's memory. Instead, it became something else entirely. Emma showed up, not alone, but with a lawyer. She was wearing designer black clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, but that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the calculated look in her eyes as she approached me. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her voice practicing perfect sorrow. When I told her we could talk later, she insisted it had to be now. "We need to discuss the inheritance," she declared, her voice rising. "I know you're trying to avoid this conversation, but I have rights too." The other mourners stared as her voice grew louder, her carefully crafted composure cracking. This wasn't the time or place, but Emma didn't care. She was there for one thing only: money. The letter. That's when I handed her David's letter. He had anticipated this moment, prepared for it with his typical foresight. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she took the envelope, her lawyer hovering nearby like an expensive shadow. The letter was clear and direct, just like David had always been. He had left everything, every asset, every property in our care facility network, everything to me. His words were precise. Anyone who hadn't been part of his life during his illness had no claim to his estate. No names were mentioned, but the message was unmistakable. I watched Emma's face change as she read it twice, then handed it to her lawyer. His expression told me everything. He knew they had no case. David's handwritten letter reinforced his official will perfectly. The breakdown. What happened next was almost theatrical. Emma's controlled facade crumbled instantly. She burst into loud, dramatic sobs and threw herself at me, trying to embrace me in front of all the mourners. Her expensive mascara ran down her cheeks as she wailed apologies for everything, for leaving, for not visiting, for ignoring David's illness. "Mom, please," she sobbed, clinging to me. "I'm so sorry for everything. I should have been here. I need you now. Please forgive me." The sudden switch from demanding inheritance to performing grief disgusted me. I could feel the eyes of every funeral guest on us as I firmly pushed her away. "Stop this," I said, my voice carrying across the hushed room. "This is your father's funeral, not a stage for your performance. You're making a mockery of everything he stood for." When she tried to protest that she was here as family, I couldn't help but laugh. A sharp, bitter sound that surprised even me. "Family?" I asked. "Family is built on blood or love. You made it clear 8 years ago that you had neither with us. When you chose to abandon us for your biological parents' wealth, you defined what family meant to you. This act now, showing up with a lawyer to demand inheritance, it only confirms that decision." The aftermath. After my outburst, Emma finally left. I later learned why she had really come. Through a series of WhatsApp messages from an unknown number, presumably hers, the whole story came out. Her perfect life with her biological parents had crumbled after 4 years. The Collins family had initially supported her extravagant lifestyle, but grew increasingly frustrated with her endless spending and lack of responsibility. Even when she got a job at their suggestion, she treated it casually, spending her entire salary on maintaining the luxurious lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. 4 years ago, James and Linda Collins finally had enough. They told her they couldn't support her anymore, seeing how she was content to simply live off their wealth rather than build real family bonds. They offered to maintain a relationship, but without the financial support. They wanted a daughter, not a dependent. "You're too busy showing off on Instagram to spend real time with us or your siblings," her biological father had apparently told her. "This isn't what family is about." Present day. Emma's messages explained that she'd been struggling on her own since then, working temporary jobs without a college degree. Her pride had kept her from reaching out when she learned about David's illness. The lawyer she'd brought to the funeral wasn't really a practicing attorney, just a friend trying to help her negotiate. "I really want to go to college," she wrote. "I was hoping to use some of the inheritance for that. But after what happened at the funeral, I don't want the money anymore. I just want you to forgive me. Please take back what you said about me not being family." 1 week later, after careful consideration, I sent her a final message. I couldn't take back my words or offer forgiveness yet. She had made her choices, and now she needed to accept the consequences. I wished her well, but asked her not to contact me again. Then I blocked her number. My mother, who I later discovered had given Emma my contact information, apologized profusely. At 70, she'd believed Emma's story about wanting to apologize. I couldn't stay angry with her. She was my only family now, and her intentions had been good. The unexpected visit. 6 days after blocking her number, Emma appeared at my door. Instead of the polished, designer-clad woman from the funeral, she looked disheveled and desperate. She stood there sobbing, begging to speak with me. "Please, just give me a chance to explain," she pleaded through tears. "I know I don't deserve it, but please." Something about her crying brought back memories of the little girl we'd first brought home, the 4-year-old who would cry at almost everything. Despite my better judgment, I let her in. The conversation. Once she had calmed down, Emma started apologizing again, but I had to stop her. "I only let you in to stop your crying," I explained, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not ready to process or accept your apology. I'm still grieving David, and that has to come first. He was my partner for over 30 years, my high school sweetheart, my husband, my business partner. I need time to deal with that loss before I can even think about anything else. After a long moment of silence, Emma nodded. She wrote her contact information on a notepad and stood up. I understand, she said quietly. I'll wait for you to reach out. I'm sorry for everything, including today. She paused at the door. I really am sorry, Sarah. It was the first time she'd called me by my first name instead of Mom. Somehow, that felt right. 5 months later, epilogue. 5 months have passed since I lost David. I'm slowly adjusting to what people call the new normal, though nothing feels normal about life without him. The care facility network keeps me busy. It's both a blessing and a challenge to manage it alone. When I'm not working, I fill my time with family, friends, and quiet evenings at home with books or television. Emma's contact information remains untouched in my desk drawer. I haven't reached out, and true to her word, she hasn't contacted me either. Maybe someday we'll find a way to rebuild something. Not what we had before, but something new. For now, though, I'm focused on healing and moving forward, just as David would have wanted.